And hello again, everyone. I'm John Ray on the Price and Value Journey. Welcome. I'm delighted to welcome Isabella Bedoya. She is the founder of Fame Hackers, and Fame Hackers is an AI-powered marketing agency that helps grow and monetize personal brands, leveraging both LinkedIn and YouTube. They assist in AI deployment for organizations who want to integrate AI into their operational workflows in order to make their teams more efficient and saving on labor cost. And I think part of that involves getting some clients along the way too, because I see that in your work as well, Isabella. Thank you so much for joining us on the Price and Value Journey.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So let's talk a little bit about you and your background first and how you got your journey and what's taken your work in this direction.
Sure. So I started in the marketing realm. I used to do influencer marketing campaigns, digital marketing. And in the process, I started a coaching business and I was helping other people do this for themselves. And earlier this year, even like towards the end of last year, I came across ChatGPT, as the whole world, right, I think got released in November. And that kind of made the big shift because at first I kind of like dismissed it. I had used tools like, Jasper and whatever. And so at first I was like, okay, that's cool. But then when I actually tested it to work on a client project, that just changed my life completely.
Okay.
Ever since then, I've been like obsessed with ChatGPT, with AI. It's just one of those things I can't stop talking about.
Well, I love that. I love that that's the case because we need to talk to you. So, and folks need to hear from you about that work. So, I'm curious about that project. You don't have to mention names, of course,
Sure.
but just the nature of that project, that the insights that came out of that for you, and what that gave you a sense of the power of Chat GPT and AI generally.
Yes, I think for everyone, from what I've been understanding as I talk to people, everybody has that kind of like aha moment that it just clicks and all of a sudden they become obsessed with it. And in my case, I was working on a digital marketing campaign for one of our clients who's doing like a Taylor Swift giveaway. He's giving like tickets away for a Taylor Swift concert.
Mm.
So I had to come up with like the whole entire marketing plan. How are we going to do this? Who are we going to target? What the videos are going to be about? Like all of the things that normally would have taken us about a week and like at least 3 people involved. I did the whole thing in like 2 hours from start to finish, sent in an email. Here's what we're going to do.
Wow. and so, but how did that happen though? I mean, because you developed the insights along the way while you were working on this to be able to do all that.
Yeah, so it's basically like what it comes down to with ChatGPT. It's about how good of a prompt you can write, the more precise.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to this, using it for this client application in particular, I had already been playing around with it for like single use cases, like, write the outline of a book, or every time I thought of like a possible use case, I would run to ChatGPT and try it and see what came out. So when I did this whole marketing strategy for this particular project, it was just basically a lot of just tweaking the prompt until I got the output that I wanted. And once I got that output, I was like, okay, I need to replicate that. I probably also Googled a little bit, like, what kind of how to type the prompt. That's very important. Also, like what to include in the prompt. But yeah, I just kind of, in the beginning, I was just kind of like everything that was in my head, I was just putting it as a prompt, no real strategy, and just seeing what came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So what's been the, or maybe it's too early to know, but what's been the outcome of this marketing strategy outline that you put together?
Yeah, so far, we're just in the midst of it. Just started actually putting this maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but like
Okay.
actually putting the videos out. Um, From what I saw, we still have to put the month one campaign report together still, but from what I did see, some of the videos did get some traction. I think there was one video that got like over 11,000 views.
Mm.
And it was really interesting because it was the headlines generated from maybe a little tweaks to make sure it's not like super, robotic, but it was the headlines that were generated from ChatGPT that we turned into TikTok videos.
Wow. That's impressive. So you talked about the prompt being the key, that's really knowing the instructions to give and how to give those are the key. This sounds a lot like the garbage in, garbage out thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So say more on that.
Sure. So when you write a prompt, normally like the first thing that you should start your prompt with is what do you actually want it to act as? So when you want like better outputs, for example, instead of saying like write 10 hooks for a TikTok video, you would start by saying like act as a social media strategist.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to create a TikTok marketing plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just give it like direct, very precise what you want it to come up with. And you could even tell it the format, the output of how you want the information presented, bullet points in a table format. You can get really precise.
So the key is learning the prompts.
Yeah, well, not necessarily having to memorize them, but more so like at least being familiar with the structure, right? So it's like what role does it take, or it has to like act into? What is the question, or like what is it that you actually want it to do for you? Mm-hmm. Creating some sort of format, giving it context, giving it guidelines of specifically what you want the AI to do. And you could even add in like things like tone of voice, or how many words you wanted to put out. You could give it like examples to say like, this is an example. I want you to create something like this. So you can definitely like train it and guide it in your direction, but it should always be a little bit more of I want to say like more of a bulky prompt, because that way you can include a lot of information for the AI to be more specific.
So all this goes into that one search bar. I don't know if that's the term we're using here for ChatGPT, but that bar, right, that you put it all in there and cut and paste it, whatever you want to do, you put it right in there.
Yep.
And yeah. So what, a lot of the criticism, and I think it comes from a lot of people that have probably never have been on it, but they read what other people criticize and they want to glom onto that, right? Is they talk about this being AI being artificial. Well, that's a original thought. That it's plain vanilla, and so there, and it has no tone of voice. So address those criticisms.
Sure. Yes. I think what's important, especially when you're dealing with AI for content, and in this case, like as an example, it's too generic. It's very shallow. It lacks the human emotion, perspective, insights, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first step is that, people have to understand that just because I gave you a content idea doesn't mean that you have to copy and paste it into, LinkedIn or whatever the case is. You should still do your due diligence and like make sure that you're optimizing the content to still sound like you. If anything, for content use case specifically, it's more so just using it as an inspiration or a guideline of what's something that you could talk about. But what would make your perspective refreshing for people to read is your unique experiences tied to that subject. So in content sense, I would use it more of a inspirational rather than just copy pasting.
Yeah. And that seems like pretty elementary to me, but I mean, you actually have to say that. It's just like plagiarism, right? I mean,
Yep.
maybe it's not the same kind of plagiarism, but copying pasting never turns out real well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there some use cases that are better than others in your experience?
So, um, I I mean, it's really mind blowing because even for example, I had just last year I did a sales training where I actually invested in coaching for sales training, and it was interesting because I tried it with ChatGPT, and I was like, let me see if ChatGPT can act as my sales coach. So I gave it a prompt. I told it to act as a sales coach, that we're gonna role play. We're gonna go through a discovery call, and then at the end provide me feedback. And I thought this was really interesting because I gave it like all the context, like you're the buyer, this is what you do. So from a training perspective for companies, it's mind blowing because if you can give specific instructions on how you want to be trained,
Mm-hmm.
this is saving so much time for companies of having to train their staff on whatever task they need to do, because they can just be trained to AI. Like ChatGPT can pick up on the prompt and run through the exercise with you. And I thought that was very powerful. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I didn't say anything, but
Oh,
since you stopped, let me ask you a question about that
sure.
specifically. Give an example out of that sales training that where you had that live individual, I guess it was that helped you. Give an example of maybe a specific part of that training that you got out of ChatGPT that you felt was uh, just as robust as what you got from the human being.
Sure. What it was the one-on-one role play. Even though in the live course there was it was a group thing and there was a lot of role play calls and it was very efficient and effective. The cool thing about ChatGPT is that I didn't have to wait for that call. I didn't have to wait in line to raise my hand in the Zoom and
Mm.
say, "Can I go next?" Right? It was, in that sense, it was very effective. In addition to that, it was like instant. It was like on my own time, and I got the feedback. I also was very precise with the prompts, so I told it like what style of sales conversation I wanted to have.
Mm-hmm.
And but now this is where it's kind of like with a grain of salt, because I knew what the correct process. I knew that the flow that was happening with ChatGPT was correct. Had I not known, I was just kind of leaving that to chance. So I still think like this is where it's important. Where AI is still very new to the whole world, that we're still in that stage where it still relies on humans. And eventually, it's going to be even more powerful. But as of right now, it still requires a human interaction with it.
Yeah, and that's where I was going. I was going to ask you, like, what, um, you obviously had the live sales training, and you must have found value in that at
Yes.
that time, right? So, but you knew, because of that training, you knew exactly kind of how to um, uh, craft the prompt that you used
Mm-hmm.
in or the prompts that you used in Chat GPT.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really where the magic is, I suppose, in turn is really knowing what instructions to give. So the what you put in doesn't result in garbage out.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I saw an article on Bloomberg earlier this week that some companies are paying up to over 300,000 a year for to be able to put in the right prompts into AI.
I saw that, and it suddenly made me think Isabella may cancel my interview because she doesn't need to talk to me. But that was my first thought, Isabella. But let's talk about you have developed an entire library of tools and use cases for Chat GPT. So
Mhm.
let's give everyone a sense of the breadth of that.
Sure. Yeah, so this is something that just for like my own it became like for my own sake, and then it was like, wait, this is very helpful for everyone else. Because I had been using ChatGPT in all these like different creative ways, I started, keeping track of the prompts that I was using, how I was getting like certain things. And then I said, you know what, let me actually compile a database. Let me just give it away to, initially it was to the LinkedIn community.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of took off. So I was like, all right, well, everyone can have it. That's not a problem. It has a ton of prompts, and I'm continuously adding. Every time I go in and create new prompts, I add them into the library so that you don't have to memorize. You can just, copy and paste it into ChatGPT, and in addition to that, there's a lot of AI tools because it's not just ChatGPT. There's also Google has Bard. So it's in terms of like the ChatGPT sense, those are like the prompts. But there's over, I think in there we've compiled, I think over 120 AI tools already.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on, it's crazy. You can even use it for like DEI. You can use it for HR. You can use it for sending emails. Like it's really wild how fast the AI space is moving and the products are coming out to make everyone's lives easier.
Yeah, that's what struck me about your library. That's what it is because it's that robust. I mean, you've got all these libraries, this library of all these prompts in all these different categories. Let's talk about HR. I mean, since you brought that up. So like you've got, for example, and I'm sitting here looking at it, folks. So you've got leadership and employee development, communication and collaboration, recognition and rewards, just to name three of them. So, and one of them talks about let's take recognition and rewards. So one of them talks about what steps you would take to provide employees with meaningful incentives and rewards. So how did you come up with that? Why did you come up with that? And why, and how did you assess the quality of the results you got out of that particular prompt?
Sure. So a lot of the building as of lately has been talking to professionals and asking them like, what are things that you what are things that you normally think about, or what are things that you normally have to like type up when you're working, or things like that. So it was a mixture of that. It was also a mixture of Googling what kind of what kind of questions HR professionals in this case would be asking themselves. And that prompt in particular, that one is to just get the conversation flowing.
Mm-hmm.
But then as the conversation starts evolving with ChatGPT, you can then give it more commands like, my company does this, or we have this in place. What about, so those prompts in that case are more for like to interact back with ChatGPT until you get the customized answer for your organization.
It's really a conversational funnel. It sounds like. I mean, you continue to funnel down the results until you get what you're looking for.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the well, again, I mean, and we'll put the link in the show notes, but you've got Facebook related like ads and posts and whatnot. Same for LinkedIn. Graphic design. That one stood out to me because a lot of people don't think, haven't gotten turned on to that quite yet in terms of, the Canva, for example. Why don't you describe what's going on there?
Yes. When it comes to the graphic design side of things, it's more of image to text.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, text to image. So crafting a prompt to get the image that you like. In addition to that, though, there's also one thing that I used just for own purposes, and I was like, that's actually very helpful. I asked it to help me with color psychology for branding and to provide the hex codes. Because obviously it's a text, right? You're going to get a text. You're not going to get an image from ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
And and yeah, and it provided me the hex codes, and then I went on Canva and I, put in all that information, and I was just like, that's pretty cool. It also tells you, kind of like how your branding should look like, the elements and all of that. So in that use case, it was really interesting. And again, it just speeds up the process that you would normally have to go in and do that research of the color psychology in that case, for example.
What about infographics? And this is another one, your section is infographics or visuals. So that's a situation where you're putting in text and creating some sort of image out of that, right?
Sure. You can ask for the text. In that case, like it's just what ChatGPT will provide is the context, the content. So same with like Instagram, LinkedIn carousels, they'll provide the content for you, but then you still have to do that manual piece of fitting it into the infographic.
Right. And it sounds like though that step may not be far away from being eliminated. At some point, all this is going to get stitched together, right? That
would be amazing.
Yeah, that will be
infographics in particular.
Yeah, that will be that will move the cheese for a lot of people. That's for sure. Yeah. So let's. I want to talk about how you've developed, how this works for you. I mean, you talked about how you've developed all these prompts. You're pretty jazzed up about it, obviously, and really been going after it with intention. I love the way you describe how you've talked to various people in various industries to do that. Yeah, that's I would think an essential part of this. But talk about how you're monetizing this work on your behalf, and at the end, folks, I want to give some shout outs to some opportunities that Isabella has for you to learn. But go ahead, Isabella.
For sure. So it's really interesting because it kind of, in a sense, the idea behind it was we're going to create this whole community around AI, ChatGPT, specifically for like business use cases, just because I was so excited about how much impact it had on my own marketing agency. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because it's kind of like a dual thing. The more attention that we get on LinkedIn, the more people want to learn more about the marketing agency. But there's also a new side of things that people are asking more about, specific prompt engineering for their companies, SOP developments and stuff like that. So it's really interesting. If anything, it's just continuing to help us grow our business and adding this new leg. And also in terms of like the monetization, it's also brands. We're starting to have some AI brands approach us and say like, hey, can we, pay you to put this on the database? And that's kind of how I pictured, that was kind of like the strategy behind why I was giving the database for free, mm-hmm. to help the community as a whole, but then monetize it through brand partnerships and UGC. And just because I come from that background, I thought that was like the most beneficial. So that way it can be super valuable to the community as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about, let's talk directly to services providers. So our consultants, our attorneys, our accountants, what have you out there that they've got a practice to run. They've got their own discipline, whatever that is. And of course they've got all that goes into that, whether it's, marketing or running their back office or whatever. So where do you suggest someone that fits that category start with the capabilities of ChatGPT? Because it's so overwhelming. It's like a fire hose.
Yes. The best suggestion is to start with one department at a time. Mm-hmm. So if you have like your marketing team or, just the other day, I was helping one of my cousins who does work with like a finance company. And they're starting this whole like in-house underwriting department. So we were just creating like underwriting SOPs for the underwriters. So it really just depends on like what I would say like the most maybe like the most challenging in terms of time, start there, because if you can optimize that to be easier with AI, not just ChatGPT, but any AI tool, if you can make that department easier for the flow of things, then that's going to be like, first of all, a huge pain point that's been lifted in your company, and then start working towards the other departments.
And so you're talking about what part of your company you're spending way too much time on in terms of a process flow. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like
Okay.
for example, like for us, a lot of the time that we were spending on was on the actual research of like market research, SEO, audience persona. That was like the biggest thing that took us forever to do all the research and create, ideal audiences. And not just from our point of view, but also from like our clients. That's always like such a challenging question. Who's your target audience? What are the pain points? And with ChatGPT, just asking it, like, I want to create an audience persona for someone that would buy something like this, include pain points, include desires, include buying behaviors, include specific brand names that they buy from. You get all of that in like a minute.
All I could do is laugh at that. I mean, that's amazing to me.
Yeah.
But again, see, what happens is people hear that and immediately their trust factor goes like way down, right? I mean, they think, how can you trust results that you get in a minute?
Yeah. And, not just the trust factor, but also like, I've seen people kind of go through like an existential crisis of like, why am I even here? Like,
right.
Like everything I've worked for, I no longer I'm being replaced by a machine. But this is one of those things that I really believe that humans are still very essential in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just going to be a matter of I kind of have this perspective on it where sorry about that.
That's okay.
I have this perspective of how when we used to do, Microsoft Word, we have to learn Microsoft Word. Especially I was in school, so I didn't really have to like go through that. But I remember like my grandparents, my parents, they all had to, learn this new technology if they wanted to be either more effective at their job or get a raise or stuff like that. And I think that's kind of what's happening with AI, where if you don't adapt, it's going to be one of those things that, you're going to be replaced by someone that has adapted. It's just a skill. It's an added skill to add to your resume. And it makes you super powerful and super, it gives you a lot of leverage within your company. The way that I see it is if you are, you alone as a marketing, let's say as a marketer, right? You alone as a marketer, you have to then hire a copywriter, a funnel builder, a web designer, a graphic designer. But with AI, you have your own team of experts. So now the company can have you become a powerhouse for the company, and that allows you to also ask for raises and be way more valuable. And the same for like the actual owners of these organizations, the owners of service firms. If you have AI in your processes, you get results for clients a lot faster, or you get client service delivery faster, which means that your clients are going to be super happy and they're going to see results faster. They're going to stick with you versus the person that's still, doing market research for 3 weeks. It's just one of those things that it makes you more competitive.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you worry about, or have you confronted this, the fact that you can get results so quickly that the client across the table looks at you and says, well, I don't know that I ought to pay a tremendous price for this because it's so easy, quote unquote, right?
So that's where you price in the value, right? And the positioning.
Thank you for that.
It's the same thing as like,
yeah.
Do you remember that graphic of a carpenter that, there's like a nail in the wall and then the carpenter's like, yeah, I'll charge you like, $100 for that. And the other person's like, I'll charge you, hourly. And the person is just like, why would I pay you $100 for that? And it's because I have the specialized skill to be able to know where to put the nail in the wall to not cause any issues. And that's exactly the the positioning and the branding that service firms, attorneys, that's kind of like what you need to align yourself with. I've had some people on LinkedIn comment on my post saying, specifically for attorneys, that they're doing like cross-examination questions within minutes. And it's really wild. It's really wild.
Well, yeah, and again, it gets back to prompts, right? So, I mean, you can get very specific about the prompts, and I mean, in that case, you can put some sort of like profile of that individual. You may, if that individual's a public figure, you may actually put their name in there, right?
Yeah. It's if they're celebrities, I know that you can do like, write it in the tone of voice of Kevin Hart, for example. It'll be a humorous output. So yeah, you can definitely insert celebrities, and if they're not that well known, it'll just ChatGPT will just say like, as a language model, I don't really know who that is, and it's okay. You just can keep trying. It's not going to explode or anything.
Yeah, and again, it's I guess the visual that comes to my mind is the funnel. I mean, you keep funneling down until you get through prompts, until you get the results that you're looking for. Yeah,
even for funnel, like speaking of funnels, even for funnels, we had a client that we helped do a virtual event, like a boot camp. And the same thing. Normally the boot camp setup would have taken me about 2 or 3 weeks to put the emails together, to put the funnel together, the promotional materials, everything. And in like 2 or 3 days, we had the whole thing up and running, launched. It's really speed is what it does. Of course, I still had to go through the answers and like, modify it to actually make sense and sound like a human. But that's why it's like, it's not 100% replacing you. It's just making your life a whole lot easier. And then you just have to go in and do the tweaks.
So let's talk about the results that I think some have commented on, where there's inherent bias, where there's ethical issues, that kind of thing. Why don't talk about filtering the results to filter that kind of stuff out?
Yeah, so that's one of those things that we kind of have to like keep in mind that it's all learning from somewhere. So it will naturally tend to sway one way or the other. But for like things in particular, like business use cases, it's not necessarily, maybe if you're in like legal where it can get a little political, but for like traditional use cases like customer service, marketing, sales, that kind of thing, it's not really that it's not really like that impactful in that sense. If you do want it to be a little bit more inclusive, you can say like act as a DEI, act as the head of DEI and make this paragraph more inclusive or whatever the case is. But I think for like the typical business case, at least so far, I haven't encountered too much of how it could be biased. But again, it depends on the prompts. It depends on the prompts. Like if you want to, if you're coming from like a certain angle, you just have to say that. You could also tell it to be like a devil's advocate, like using that word. That's a command. Be a devil's advocate about this. You can say, what was the other one? Analogous. Like to give you an analogous response. So you can kind of like get it to, when you get a response, you can kind of get it, tweak it so that it actually shows you both sides. But it just comes down to the prompts, not taking the first, the word for it.
So let's talk about ChatGPT versus Google and Google's Bard. Talk about what if you've dived into both, and what kind of conclusions do you have about both?
Sure. Yes. I did start using Bard. I think you still have to be on a wait list. But yeah, I did start using Bard, and it's just very new that so far I think ChatGPT has been giving better answers. From what I understand, though, Bard has access to the internet. Like, it actually has access to like real time data, whereas ChatGPT 3.5 is all the way through the end of 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and ChatGPT 4, which just released, that, from my understanding, it was as a random number, but just kind of paint the picture. I think the it's like 100 billion data points, whereas in ChatGPT 4, it's like this massive, like in the trillions of the amount of data that it actually is pulling from. So ChatGPT 4 is massive. The prompts and the output that you can get from ChatGPT 4 is also a lot better than ChatGPT 3. But Bard, when I tried it, it was still too generic. Like, I asked it to do the same market audience prompt, and it was just very generic. Like, pick a target audience, pick your social channels, and it's like that's not
Mm.
that's not what I was asking.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It was very high level results.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah, exactly.
And do you recommend at this point? And I mean, look, we're in March 31st as we do this interview, and who knows what's going to happen just 2 months from now. But you've got to be a paid subscriber to Chat GPT to get version 4, right?
Yes.
So do you recommend that the average person out there be a paid subscriber? Are the results that they get from version 4 that much better than 3.5?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I have the paid version, but I have the paid version because um I started just using it every day in my daily activities, that around noon it would just start crashing because it would just be an influx of people. So it would be really slow, it'd start crashing. So when you upgrade, it's like $20 a month, it's not anything crazy. Um and that meant that I didn't have that lag time.
Mm-hmm.
In the process, of course, then I got access to ChatGPT 4. For the average person, though, I think ChatGPT 3.5 is fine. It's something that the downside right now with ChatGPT 4 is that you can only use 25 prompts in 3 hours. So they have a limit because it's new, they're rolling it out. It's probably a lot more technology on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas on ChatGPT 3, you don't have that limit. And also, ChatGPT 4 is slower, so you can just see it like type and it takes forever. Whereas version 3.5, it's very fast. Like, you just see it like sip through. So if you do decide to upgrade, I would upgrade based more on like the speed of the usage and not having that limit. But it doesn't hurt to try ChatGPT 4. It's way more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Well, I mean, I'm a paid subscriber, so I just for that very reason. So for $20 a month, why not? So I want to, as we kind of wrap up here, I want to, make sure we talk about you and kind of the services that you offer, Isabella, and you've got a workshop coming up that I noticed. So let's give you've given us a lot of great information. Let's give you a chance to talk about how folks can connect with you and learn more from you.
Thank you. Yes. Best way to connect right now is on LinkedIn. Like, my name on there is Isabella Bedoya. And other ways to connect with me, I also have the AI database library and a Slack channel inside of that database, which we'll probably link it at the end of the video, right? And the show notes.
Yep.
And yes, I do have the workshop coming up. It's on April 12th at noon Eastern, so 12 to 2 p.m. It's a 2-hour workshop. And the purpose of that workshop is to actually go through business use cases, how to actually monetize it, discover a little bit more on like the different roles and the different operational workflows that you could create with it. So it'll be very interactive. And also, since it's live, it's not necessarily like this it'll be live in the sense also of we get to interact with it. So if anyone has any like prompts that they want to see or any things that they actually want to talk through, there's time for that.
That's terrific. Isabella Bedoya, folks, she is with Fame Hackers. That's her firm. And just in general, ChatGPT aside, talk about your work at Fame Hackers. Let's get that out there as well, Isabella.
Sure. Yes. At Fame Hackers, we help with building personal brands. And a lot of the things that we do is, short form video marketing, creating monetization strategies like virtual events or whatever the case is. And in addition, this is where AI is amazing because we have figured out ways to integrate AI into like the video editing. So the videos are super fast and super high quality too, and very engaging, following all the engagement tactics that short form video creators use. So that's essentially what we help with. I have worked with organizations as well with like just their marketing strategies. But right now, like I mentioned, we're having this whole influx of people asking us to help them with their AI SOPs internally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in a nutshell, essentially, like what we do.
Yeah, I am sure you have been busy. And congratulations on that. I love stories like this where someone with your ingenuity is taking advantage of an opportunity in the market, which you obviously have done. So congratulations on that and your success.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for, sharing your time, with us. But one more time, just to make sure people have the, information on how they can connect with you.
Yeah. On LinkedIn, my name is Isabella Bedoya, and, I think the handle is Isword, IZZWORD.
Terrific. Isabella Bedoya with Fame Hackers. Isabella, this has been enlightening, fun, and I'm sure for some scary, but I think it all adds up to something good. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Of course, no, thank you. And if anyone has any questions or want to chat further, feel free to reach out. And thank you so much, John, for having me here.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you. And folks, just a quick reminder, if you want more information on this series, this podcast series, go to pricevaluejourney.com. You can find the show page or the show archive there. And of course, you can also find that on your favorite podcast app pretty easily if you want to find it there. You can also sign up to receive updates on my book that's coming out later this year called The Price and Value Journey, Raising Your Confidence, Your Value, and Your Prices Using the Generosity Mindset Method. And if you'd like to send me a note directly, please do so, john@johnray.co. Thank you again for joining us. Thanks again to Isabella Bedoya for joining us on this episode of The Price and Value Journey.